Hello and welcome back to the Little Craft House. Today's tutorial is not at all what I had planned to do. So originally I was planning some designs that required patterns, and to make these patterns I needed stamps. However, I didn't own the stamps that I needed to create them. So I thought, why not just make some, and why not bring you guys along with me? Making these stamps is a bit of a scrap buster as well, because I'm going to be making them using a whole bunch of my scrap polymer clay. So of course they don't have to be pretty, but I want them to be reasonably nice. So what I'm doing is grabbing all of my scrap clay that I have on my desk. I've organised it into piles of similar colours, and then we're going to mix them up to create some very unique colour blends. So when I mix my scraps like this, I always start by just using my acrylic hand roller first before I put it through the pasta machine. Most of these scraps aren't conditioned, they've just been sitting on the side of my tile for a while after I've finished using them for whatever project they were being used for. They've just been sitting there, so they've firmed up quite a bit. So I'm just getting them softened up first before I go and put it through the machine. So if you didn't have a pasta machine, obviously you can just still mix your scraps like this. Just keep rolling and folding and rolling and folding until your colours are all mixed nicely. Now, I didn't realise that there was a piece of yellow underneath there. I would have added that to the yellow pile, but that's okay. I've just moved it over to my pasta machine now, and we're just going to keep putting it through until the colours are nicely blended together and I have a new colour. And I'm going to do this with each of those piles of colours so that we've got some nice scrap mixes to work with. So I also have this beigey coloured clay as well as this bluey one as well to work with. The blue one has a bit of granite mixed through it, the turquoise granite, so it's got a few little black speckles in it, but that shouldn't affect our project today at all. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my extruder here, and I'm going to extrude some clay so that we've got some strands to work with for making some patterns. So I'm using this disc here. The clay that comes out of it isn't too thick. Obviously you could change the discs depending on the shapes and patterns you are making, but I'm just going to go with these thin strands. And to be honest, I really overdid this. I overestimated the amount that I was going to need. I barely used any at all, but I decided to extrude a nice big amount of these strings. So I just need to clear the way first before I go and use the extruder. I like to use my twisty extruder because it is much gentler on the hands. However, it is still quite a bit of an effort to get the clay extruded. If you're interested in the clay extruder and the things that you can do with it, if you scroll back, there's quite a few projects that I have done on both the short section here on YouTube as well as in the full-length tutorials. There's quite a range of things that I use the extruder for. And the extruder that I use is one that we sell in our store. So if you're in Australia, pop on over to our website. That's where you can grab yourself one. And if you're not in Australia, check out your local clay supplier because they should have one available for you as well. So as mentioned before, this is definitely way too much clay. I didn't need to extrude this much, probably only even like a quarter of this would have been fine. And my biggest tip for using a clay extruder is to make sure that your clay is conditioned really well and that it's as soft as possible. So even if it's over conditioned, you can extrude it out and then just leave it for a little bit to firm up before you leave it if you need to. Okay, so we're going to start by making the bases for each of our clay stampers. So I've got the clay here, which has been rolled out to the 3mm thickness, the thickest setting of my pasta machine, and I've just folded it in half to obviously double that thickness. So I don't know if that's going to be thick enough or if I want to do one more layer to make it about 9mm. I suppose it doesn't really matter. It's all personal preference for how thick you want. and probably just depending on how much clay is available as well. I might make this one slightly thicker and just see how that feels. So I'm just going to layer it on top here and chop it down. I'm not 100% sure what sizing I needed to make these, so I'm just going random squares, rectangle sized shapes, and then I can adjust them afterwards if need be. So that's a nice thickness, I think, the 9mm. I'm just giving it a little roll just to bond each of those layers together and probably thinning it out a little bit as I go, but that's okay. It's nicely bonded together and that makes quite a nice little square base. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with that one. I'll just pop that one to the side, grab those scraps. I can use them again afterwards. I'm just going to go ahead and make some more bases with the rest of this clay. I'm going to do all different colours using each of the coloured scraps. And I might do a couple a little bit thinner as well, just so that I can sort of compare for future if I want to make them again. Now, obviously it doesn't matter how much I'm cutting off the edges here. Each of those scrap bits can just get mushed back together, and that's what we're going to make the feature pieces out of in just a moment. Okay, so I've got some to start with and I might make some more afterwards. So I just have a little check of each of these to make sure that I'm putting the flattest side to the bottom. Some of them got a few little creases on them or marks from when I lifted them up with the knife. So I just want to make sure that I'm got the flattest side on the bottom, and then that's where I'm going to put the details. So I've got one of my extruded clay pieces here and we're going to make a little rainbow shape. So originally I was thinking of doing lots of shapes with these strands, which is why I extruded way more than I needed. But I decided that I'm just going to do a couple for this tutorial today, but some other sorts of shapes you could do would definitely be some like swirly patterns or sort of just squiggly shapes and things, which would work quite easily with these extruded strands. So I think I might have to maybe do a reel or a shorts or something to show those extra things that you can do with it. So my clay is proving to be a little bit fiddly here. I think also because I'm trying not to block the camera as well, which obviously I'm not succeeding overly well, but I'm trying my hardest not to. I'm using the knife just to trim the ends of the rainbow as well, just so that they're nice, sharp, flat ends, and afterwards I am going to even it out because it's a little bit on a little bit wonky at the moment, but I will fix that in just a moment. So to secure this design down, I'm just going to get my roller and I'm going to give a really gentle roll. So I still want the shape to be risen above that base, because that's obviously what's going to give us an imprint or to put the paint on when we're stamping. But I want it just to flatten down a little bit so that it's flat rather than curved, so that the shape is more defined when we're doing a print. It also helps to bond it to the clay as well, because we don't want it falling off when we're using it, especially if a bit of suction is created. If we're doing it as an imprint on clay or with paint, it might create a bit of a suction. We don't want our shapes to fall off of our stamps. Okay, on to the second idea that I had for these little strands was just to make some little dashes, some little stripes. So I'm just going to go 3 because I kind of like the odd numberness of it. So just 3 little lines, and we're just going to transfer these onto my smallest little stamper base here. I'm just going to cut it a bit smaller because it doesn't need to be quite as big. So let's trim that down, and then I'm just going to transfer these little lines onto it. And once again, once I am finished and happy with the positioning of each of these pieces, I'm going to take my roller and just give it that slight little roll over again, just to adhere them onto the base and also flatten them down again as well. Okay, next up, I wanted to make this one a little bit thicker. So I've just, again, folded my clay in half just to make it a little bit more chunkier. So, and then I rolled it. So I brought it maybe about 5mm, maybe. And I'm going to use a shape cutter this time as well. So some shapes that I already have. So I'm going to use this little one first because I'm going to make it a hollow shape. So I'm just going to bond it to the tile there. And then I'm using the little shape to cut the internal first, and then the larger shape around it. So by bonding it to the tile like I just did with the rolling pin means that when I use the cutter, it should hopefully keep the clay adhered to the tile. Well, it didn't, it lifted, but it didn't get stuck into the cutter. So this made a cute little hollow circle, little donutty shape, and we're going to put that onto the piece. Now, I'm not sure what's better, to put the flat side that was on the tile so it's facing up, that's the side that's going to give us the print, or is it better to put that slightly rounded edge down because I'm giving it a roll anyway? I'm not really sure. I don't think it actually matters, but yeah, I've just popped that on there. As long as it's clean around the edges so it doesn't have any of that like hanger on bits that happen sometimes with the cutter. And I'm just going to put that circle to the side because I'm going to use that for another shape as well. So I thought rather than just blending it all up and mixing it again, I'm just going to use that small circle cutter, and I'm just going to cut a couple out, and we're going to use them to make some little circles on our stamper. So I was thinking 4, but I think now I'm just going to go 3. As I mentioned before, I kind of like the odds better rather than going even numbers. So I think we'll just go 3 like that. And that'll make a cute little print. Okay, doing those little circles then has just inspired me for our next stamper. I had that little bit of blue to the side that I cut off that other base piece earlier, and it's in quite a nice little square shape. I am going to square it off a little bit more because it's a little bit more rectangular than square, but I think squares, and I think I'm going to do some squares on this stamper. So I'm just going to cut them, and I'm just hoping that they're not going to squish down too much. I might just reshape them a little bit with my fingers if it squishes a little bit. And again, I think if I do 9, it's going to look, yeah, I don't know. I think I might, let's just see how many fit on this base. Yeah, I'll just square them off a little bit with my fingers because they ended up being a little bit squished. And I think I'll just do the 2 rows of 3. I think that will definitely be enough. I possibly could just do 1 row of 3, but I've already cut them, so I think I'll just do the 2 rows of 3. And I'll just give them a little roll to bond them back down. I realised before I didn't roll the circle ones, so I'll go back and do that in a minute just to make sure that they are bonded on nicely. And I'll just chop off this little bit of excess on the side as well. So they're not perfect squares, but I think they're kind of cute. I like that little irregularness to it. Okay, so I found this cutter in my stash whilst I was looking for a different one, and I think that I really like this shape. I've never really used it for earrings because I don't really know why, but I've never really used it for earrings. But I think it's going to make a really good stamper because I really like that shape. Now, I'm just wondering if I need it to be thicker. Maybe I'll do 2 and stack them on top of each other. Maybe 1 might be enough. I might not need it to be double thickness. We'll see how we go. I'm just going to use my knife here to trim off those little extra bits. You know, before I mentioned about making sure that it was clean. You don't want any of those like rough bits around the edge. So because I'm not going to be able to sand these afterwards like you would with earrings or an external piece, you can sand around the outside. But this is going to be stuck onto the stamper. So I'm not going to be able to get a sander in there to clean it up afterwards. So I'm just using that little blade now just to take off any of that extra roughness. Yeah, I don't think stacking is going to work. So I'm just going to do it with the singular piece. I'm hoping it's deep enough. I think it should be. I think it should be okay. I think I've been going a little bit overboard making them super deep, but I think that'll be fine. And I actually kind of really like those colours together as well. So I'm looking forward to using this one because it's kind of cute. Actually, this one would be good at Christmas as well. I could do wrapping paper. Oh, I'm thinking too many things. All right, so I'm just having a look at the ones that I have done at the moment. I really do love that rainbow. Actually, do you know what? I love them all. I've got lots of ideas happening in my head of all the things that we can do with these. Okay, I was about to chuck them into the oven, but I've come up with another couple of ideas to do. So I'd already cut this one to the side because I wasn't sure. I just had that idea in my brain, but I didn't film it because I was like, it might not work. But it looks quite good. So I just got a rectangle and then cut it up, but on sort of like diagonals, so that way the pieces aren't perfect triangles between each other, if you know what I mean. You can see what it looks like here. I'm just going to transfer it on. Again, it was just one of the thin pieces. I didn't thicken that one, so it's only about 3 millimeters deep, this one. I'll place them on and then we'll just secure them again with the roller. And I really like that. It's a cool little funky shape. And that one, the base is only 2 thick as well, two layers thick, because I was running out of the green. Although I do have all that additional extruded clay that I could have mounted back up to add an extra layer. But I am going to use one of those strands just to do a bit of a squiggle now. So I talked about the squiggle before. This is just a tiny little offcut piece that I'm doing it on. So just, yeah, just a little zigzaggy, squiggly shape. But I think this would actually look good on a really big one as well, doing it in all different directions. And then especially on clay, you could just do it as one big imprint of a big squiggle, and then you could infill it with paint or Posca marker or liquid clay or something. That would be really cool. I might have to do that for another day's tutorial. So looking back at the stampers that I've already made, I've now been inspired to do a hollow square. So I just thought that that would look kind of cool. Maybe I can, like when I'm doing the imprints, I can overlap them. Not really sure, but I thought I'd give it a go anyway. I had some square cutters handy in the sizing that I wanted. Otherwise I would have just freehand cut it, because obviously squares are easy to freehand cut. I was also thinking I don't want this square to be completely perfect either. I want it to be a little bit winky wonky, so it didn't matter if I didn't line up that center cut quite as well. And I'm going to kind of distort it a little bit as I'm putting it on anyway. Not a huge amount, but I just don't want it to be an absolute perfect square. Okay, so here is the little collection of stampers now that I've made. So I'm really liking all of them. I'm getting lots of ideas on ways that I can use them. Okay, so now I am going to pop them into the oven to get them all baked up and cured. Now, because these are thicker than my normal earrings that I would do, I will need to bake them a little bit longer. So I'm going to go an hour at 130 degrees Celsius. And then I'm just going to check and see how they are. I think that should be fine. But yeah, they're a bit thicker than earrings. Usually earrings I do for around 45 to an hour. So we'll start with an hour, see how they go, and I can just adjust it if need be. So fresh out the oven, and they have cooled down now. You'll see that I did add an extra 2 little ones there. Couldn't help myself, had to make some different shapes as well. I've still got plenty more ideas, which I haven't got to yet. So I ended up baking them for the hour. They seem quite well cooked at the hour, so that was fine. So I thought now I'll just do a little demonstration on how they can be used as a stamper in your clay. So just got some scrap polymer clay here, and literally just pressing it down and creating an imprint in the clay. Like so. And I love that rainbow. It worked really well. So my idea behind giving them all a quick little test as well, just to see how the imprint works, obviously, but I also just want to make sure that each of the shapes has adhered properly to that base piece. If anything comes loose, then because they're both baked pieces, I can just use some super glue to glue them back together, or I could use liquid clay and then rebake, but the easiest way would probably just be with the super glue. Okay, so that stretched a little bit as I pulled it up. Then when I imprinted it, it didn't stretch. It worked perfectly fine. So just that's why it looks a little stretched from where I've lifted it then. that one worked quite well. That was quite a thick shape. I was a bit worried how that one would work. And that one worked really well as well. I was wondering how it would go with those little gaps in between. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how all of these are imprinting. They're looking really good. So over the coming weeks, my other idea, the idea that I was originally going to do for today's tutorial, I'm going to work on that for next week. But over the next couple of weeks, I will try and put up some more examples of ways to use these and incorporating them into my creations as well. So just to give you guys some ideas on ways to use them. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I'll probably upload them into the shorts section, and also probably over on Instagram as well in the Reels section. So we are pretty much at the end of today's tutorial. I hope you guys have enjoyed coming along with me and making these little texture tools, little stampers. Yeah, I've had lots of fun and I've got lots of ideas running around my head. I'm going to need to get some more scrap clay, I think, to make some more. If it's inspired you to make your own, please tag me in any posts that you do on social media, because I would love to see what you guys created and how you've used them. So I'll be back next week with hopefully my other idea, showing you how to use them. And yeah, thanks for joining me today. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.